Yep. Well, moving on to the next team, the New England Patriots. Obviously, last year did not have the most amazing year post Tom Brady. Went 7-9, but man, they decided to try and bounce back in a big way, and that was through spending money in free agency. But first off, they did lose quite a few key names that we have grown accustomed to when it comes to the Patriots. Starting off in the offensive line, they lost guard Joe Tooney, who obviously went to the Kansas City Chiefs, and that was a pretty big move. But we know the Patriots, they tend to lose a lot of offensive linemen, and they just keep pumping them out, and their offensive line is still fine. So wouldn't be too worried about that. Also lost tackle Marcus Cannon, but I believe they replaced him with tackle Trent Brown, former Patriot who returned. So once again, not concerned. Wide receiver Julian Edelman retired. That would be, a pretty heartbreaking loss. But obviously, with Tom Brady gone, Gronk gone, all the old guard, Julian Edelman was one of the few guys that was still holding out, and he decided to call it. And their wide receiver room, they addressed it pretty heavily. So not the biggest loss. They traded running back Sonny Michel to the Los Angeles Rams after Cam Akers got hurt. I know a lot of people are really high on Michelle, but I don't think Bill Belichick is, because after his rookie year where he did really well and was very key to that Super Bowl run, when Damien Harris came in this past year, he was the guy. He was the one who got all the touches. And I think that losing Sonny Michel for, I think it was a 6th-round draft pick, like that's just a standard Bill Belichick move. The guy, he's getting closer to a contract extension. You move off him for the running back that you're, more willing to keep and more willing to give the heavy dose of carries to. They also lost running back Rex Burkhead, one of their typical standard receiving backs, but they have James White. They've had him for so long, so it's
Surprised
not
James
that big of
White
an issue.
hasn't left or just worn out yet. But I guess it's just
Yeah,
because of his role. His role allows him not to take
yeah,
that much physical damage.
and I think maybe he's found his place. He loves it. And then obviously they lost Jason McCourty, who we just talked about going to the Miami Dolphins. Now, the additions, there is a lot. And like I said, they spent a lot of money in free agency. I think this was potentially the most money the Patriots have ever spent in free agency in their franchise history. Started off, they got edge rusher Matthew Judon, who left from the Baltimore Ravens. They added linebacker Raekwon McMillan, safety Jalen Mills. As we talked about, they added tackle Trent Brown, formerly with them. He came back. They brought in center Ted Karras. Wide receiver, this was a big position of need after last year. So they brought in both Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar. And then the two big swings that I think most people were pretty excited about was bringing in the two tight ends, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, the two premier talents at tight end on the free agency market. They brought in both, which is giving people flashbacks to Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. And then in the draft, they got their guy. They got quarterback Mac Jones. A lot of people had him going there. It felt like it was the perfect fit. And so far in the preseason, he's looked all that and more. They've also added defensive lineman Christian Barmore, a guy from Alabama. The Bill Belichick Nick Saban relationship, it always does well when it comes to draft time. So 2 straight picks were from Alabama, and then notably running back Ramondre Stevenson. As we talked about, Sonny Michel is gone. Damian Harris is the guy, but that opens up that sort of backup role of who's going to fill in, because the Patriots love to run with a committee at running back, and he has balled out this preseason. I think he is first in running backs when it comes to total rushing yards and yards after contact in the entire preseason so far. So we'll see if the 4th-round pick can become a key contributor to the Patriots, as most of the running backs always tend to be. But Aaron, how are you feeling about the Patriots? I know it's a tough division with the Bills, the Dolphins looking really good, and now the monster additions that the Patriots made. But how do you feel about them moving forward and their potential to, make a playoff run?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to definitely be back in the conversation. I mean, last year they were right when they started to figure it out. Cam got COVID, and I think we could all agree that was a lesser talented team. And I think we had mentioned it because there's no preseason, lack of training camp, things like that. It hurt the Patriots a lot because that's a team that is definitely more reliant on their coaching and their schematics week to week, as opposed to some other teams where they're more reliant on talent. Well, now you know, we had a preseason, had more of a usual training camp, and then like we just mentioned, they added a lot of guys. I mean, size was an issue on their defensive line and front seven in general, added Christian Barrymore and Matt Judon. I know Matt Judon not going to be getting double digit sacks. That's not what they want. They want Matt Judon's going to defend the run, and yeah, he'll do his job, apply pressure. Maybe he'll get 8 9 sacks, but he's versatile, and that's what New England loves. New England loves versatility, added depth with Ted Karras. He can play not only center but guard and tackle. They value that a lot. Then we mentioned the wide receivers. I think previously they can take handoffs, sweeps. They can also go downfield, run multiple different routes, and especially if they do go with Cam week 1, because there's still that uncertainty. But I think that they will, just because it might be too. I don't think they want to hand the keys too early to Mac Jones. But regardless, if Cam's struggling like he did towards the end of last season, I think Mac Jones has shown that he can step in. And it's not going to be the same offense, obviously, where pulling guards and Cam's gonna and the quarterback keeps it and runs. But it's still going to be an effective offense where it's going to be like Tom Brady offense again, where going to run the ball, and then also he can drop back and pass and dice you up that way. And then yeah, like John mentioned too, because of the 2 tight ends, they can do that. Both tight ends can also split out in the pass game, or play action game, or the bootlegs. And then last point, the running back. I mean, yeah, let go of Sony Michel, who it seemed like, I think from what I read, he's had a lot of knee issues or just leg issues after that 1 year, so probably why they cut bait. But it's New England. They find other running backs, like John mentioned, Ramondre Stevenson, great preseason. Same with J.J. Taylor. That's probably why they felt comfortable letting Rex Burkhead go also. So, yeah, I expect this New England team to be right in the mix. I expect the defense to be right back in it, because even if Stephon Gilmore doesn't really play, J.C. Jackson deserves to be up there, and as cornerback 1, he's shown that, and especially if they do have Stephon Gilmore, then and they've invested throughout the years in other cornerbacks. So I expect this is, like I said, this is a tough division, and I think it's gonna be a very competitive division. I think they'll be in the playoff conversation. I'm not going to say for sure that they'll be in the playoffs, because I am worried about New England. Like everyone has a weakness, and the weakness is maybe not getting the best wide receivers. Yeah, they'll hit on the Edelmans and the Welkers, but there's a reason N'Keal Harry is on the block. And remember, They picked N'Keal Harry over guys like DK Metcalf, AJ Brown,
Yep.
Even Mecole Hardman. They miss. So, and Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, I think that was kind of those were upside kind of grabs. Yeah, so we'll see how it works out for them. But yeah, I expect New England to be right in the mix, and they're right back in it, man. Like this will be a fun season for this team, for this division.
Before I go, first off, do you think Mac Jones will start any games this year, barring injury from Cam Newton? Let's say Cam Newton and Mac Jones both healthy all this year. Do you think he'll start? And if so, at what point do you think they would turn over the reins to him?
I gotta imagine it would be like. So, for answer your first part of your question, I'm gonna go with yes, and it's just because it's not that I don't believe in Cam Newton. Well, I guess I don't really, but it seems like every year Cam fixes his mechanics on the off season, but then as like the weeks go on, he reverts back to some of his bad habits, where it's he's using most of his arm, not really using his lower body, and then we see issues with his shoulder and things like that. So yeah, I think Mac Jones will take over, and I haven't looked at their schedule, but I imagine it would be like week 7 or 8, because that's usually when Cam kind of starts faltering off. And we saw last year. I mean, granted, it may have been just because to keep Cam healthy, but they pulled Cam, put in Jared Stidham at times. So I wouldn't be shocked if it was sooner, but if I had to bet, it'd be like week 7 or 8. If Cam's struggling, Mac Jones goes in, has a good ending to the game. Next week, we're going with Mac from here on out.
Yeah, so the notable game on their schedule is they do play the Buccaneers. They play Tom Brady, but it is in week 4. And so I think
Cam's
a lot of
undefeated
people
against Tom, so that's why they got to keep him until.
Yeah.
But
I just think a lot of people are under the assumption that Cam basically has those 4 weeks. That is your proving ground because I
Yeah.
don't think Bill Belichick or the Patriots want to put Mac Jones out there against the Super Bowl champion Tom Brady because the expectations and the pressure will be so much higher because it's not going to be just Patriots Buccaneers. It's Tom Brady versus the guy who's supposed to be the next Tom Brady,
Yeah, who's
Mac
literally like
Jones,
built
right?
like him and like went to New
Yeah.
England too.
And obviously Cam is technically Tom Brady's successor, but like Mac Jones is really labeled as Tom Brady's true successor.
Yeah,
And
he's the guy
so,
that they're drafting and wanting,
yep.
obviously wanting to develop.
Yeah. And so I just think they don't want to put him in that situation, especially since, once again, it's the reigning Super Bowl champs. The Buccaneers have a really good defense. It just wouldn't be a smart move for anybody. And Cam, he's a veteran. He's played in the bright lights. And I know that Mac Jones has played in college championship games. But if we're being honest, that would probably be the biggest game of his career to that point, right there. You're playing against Tom Brady, the Super Bowl champions, and just the amount of pressure, it would just be huge to where Cam Newton, he's played in a Super Bowl. This game is just another game to him. It's not a big deal. So to me, yeah, I don't know when Mac Jones starts. I do think he's going to take over at some point in the year, especially if they don't necessarily have the start that they want. But I think it's going to be sometime after that Buccaneers game. After that, they play the Texans, the Cowboys, the Jets, the Chargers, the Panthers, the Browns, the Falcons. So not the toughest string of like defenses there.
Who was
The
before the Jets?
Browns,
I'm sorry.
the Texans, and Cowboys. So I mean, there's a pretty much to finish out their season. Honestly, not a whole lot of tough defenses until you get to like the last 4 or 5 weeks. So I could definitely see Mac Jones getting in there somewhere, like you said, around week 7, maybe 6, 8, in that sort of range. Because so far in the preseason, he's looked honestly like the best rookie quarterback. Like if we're just going to put it plainly, he's looked like the best rookie quarterback. But overall, for their offseason, I'm never a big believer in building through free agency. I think historically, too, the teams who spend the most in free agency don't do the best. But that's also in large part because the teams who are spending the most often are really bad and are spending, a ton of cap space because they don't have it allocated to people they've drafted. So the Patriots are sort of unique in that way because they weren't terrible last year, and all these additions could elevate them into a winning record. But like you, I'm not fully ready to put them as a playoff spot. And I think that once again goes down to the Bills are really good. The Dolphins got better. There's only 3 wild card spots, right? And that's what I think the Patriots are going to be hunting for. I don't think they're going to win the division unless like Josh Allen gets hurt or something. Then that opens the door. But I think it should be the Bills. And if it's not the Bills, I'd pick the Dolphins over the Patriots as of right now, just because of how loaded they are. But yeah, it's just tough to have them a lock as a wild card team because let's say the Dolphins take one of those spots, a toss up between the Browns and the Ravens. Now you got the Patriots, the Chargers, the Raiders, the Steelers. There's just a lot of teams, the Colts vying for that last wild card spot. So I'm not ready to say that they're going to make it yet, but I think they're definitely in the conversation, like you said.
Yeah.
So overall, solid offseason, and I think a lot of people are more excited about Mac Jones than they were. And I don't like Mac Jones that much. I don't like the Patriots that much, but part of me is rooting for him to be successful because both you and I had him mocked to go number 3 overall, and we got so much hate because of what we did there. And obviously, he was the 5th out of the 5 top quarterbacks taken. But like I said, the preseason so far, he's looked like the best out of
What
all
up, Mitch?
5.